In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where ancient bloodlines rule over star systems and genetic superiority determines social standing, humanity was considered nothing more than a curious anomaly. The galactic nobility viewed Earth's children as primitive upstarts who had somehow stumbled into spacefaring technology through sheer luck rather than evolutionary excellence. When Marcus Chen, a simple human engineer from the outer colonies, announced his engagement to Lady Zara Thule of House Vextari, one of the most prestigious Altarian noble families spanning 3-star systems, the aristocratic elite didn't just disapprove. They laughed. What they didn't know was that this primitive human carried within him the legacy of a species that had crawled out of evolutionary hell, fought their way to the stars through pure determination, and developed technologies that would make even the most advanced civilizations tremble. The wedding would become the most talked-about event in galactic history, not for the union it celebrated, but for the demonstration of power that would forever change how the galaxy viewed humanity. Some lessons are learned the hard way. For the galactic nobility, that lesson was about to begin. The crystalline spires of Vextari Prime stretched toward the purple sky, like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns that had shone upon the Altarian homeworld for over 10,000 years. Within the grandest spire, the Hall of Eternal Bonds, preparations were underway for what many considered the most scandalous wedding in recent galactic history. Marcus Chen stood before the massive mirror in his assigned quarters, adjusting the formal attire that felt alien against his human skin. The traditional Altarian ceremonial robes were made from a fabric that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, responding to the wearer's emotional state. On Altarians whose skin naturally produced bioluminescent patterns, the effect was striking. On Marcus, it simply made him look like he was wearing an expensive costume. A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry. Marcus called out permission, and the door dissolved into motes of light, revealing a figure that made him smile despite his nervousness. Still having second thoughts about marrying into the most powerful family in this sector? Zara Thal stepped into the room, her natural beauty enhanced by the subtle glow patterns that danced across her blue-tinted skin. Her silver hair cascaded over shoulders that bore the intricate scarification marks of her noble house, and her large violet eyes held a warmth that had captured Marcus's heart 3 years ago when they first met at the engineering symposium on Kepler Station. "Not about marrying you," Marcus replied, moving to take her hands in his. "About whether your family will ever accept that you're marrying a human." Zara's expression grew troubled. "My father has been difficult, and the other houses attending the ceremony have made their opinions quite clear. But, Marcus, I love you. That's all that matters to me." Marcus nodded, but both of them knew it wasn't that simple. In Altarian society, bloodlines determined everything. The purity of one's genetic heritage, the psychic abilities that manifested in the noble houses, the technological adaptations that had been cultivated over millennia. These were the measures by which individuals were judged. Humans, with their chaotic genetics and lack of any notable psychic abilities, were viewed as evolutionary dead ends. "Tell me again why your father agreed to this union," Marcus said, though he suspected he knew the answer. Zara's bioluminescent patterns flickered with embarrassment. "The mining rights to the Kepler Belt asteroids that humanity controls. The rare Earth elements there are essential for our quantum processors. Father sees this marriage as a business arrangement that happens to make his daughter happy." Before Marcus could respond, another chime announced a visitor. This time the door revealed a figure that made both of them stiffen with wariness. Lord Commander Texmore of House Creval stood in the doorway, his imposing 7-foot frame wrapped in the midnight blue robes of his station. The psychic crown floating above his elongated skull pulsed with malevolent energy. "Lady Zara Thule," Texmore's voice carried the harmonic undertones that marked him as one of the most powerful psychics in the Noble Council. "I trust you are prepared for today's..." "Esti, Lord Commander," Zara replied formally, her own bioluminescent patterns shifting to display respect tinged with defiance. "I wasn't aware you were attending our ceremony. Thexmore's forearms moved in a gesture that Marcus had learned indicated amusement among the Altarian nobility. "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for anything. It's not often we witness such a unique union. Tell me, human, what gifts do you bring to this marriage besides your species' reputation for breeding rapidly?" Marcus felt his jaw clench, but Zara spoke before he could respond. "Marcus is one of the most brilliant engineers in the galaxy. His work on quantum field manipulation has advanced our understanding of—" "Understanding?" Thexmore interrupted with a laugh that sounded like crystal wind chimes. "Child, this creature's species has barely learned to harness nuclear fusion effectively. What could he possibly teach us about quantum manipulation that we haven't known for centuries?" "Perhaps," Marcus said quietly. "You'd be surprised." The psychic crown above Thexmore's head flared brighter, and Marcus suddenly felt a pressure in his mind, as if something was trying to push its way inside his thoughts. For a moment, the Altarian Lord's expression showed concentration, then confusion, then genuine surprise. "Interesting," Thexmore mused. "Your mind is unusually shielded for a non-psychic species. No matter. Enjoy your wedding day, human. I suspect it will be quite memorable." After the Altarian Lord departed, Zara looked at Marcus with concern. "He tried to read your mind, didn't he? But he couldn't get through. How is that possible?" Marcus touched a small, seemingly decorative pin on his lapel. "Human ingenuity. We may not have been born with psychic abilities, but we've learned to defend against them." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation and growing tension. As the ceremony time approached, Marcus made his way to the Hall of Eternal Bonds, where hundreds of the galaxy's most influential beings had gathered. The hall itself was a marvel of Altarian architecture, with walls that seemed to be carved from a single massive gemstone. Holographic displays showed the attendees from across the galaxy as this wedding was being broadcast to billions of viewers. Marcus took his position at the altar, trying to ignore the whispers and stares from the assembled nobility. He could make out representatives from dozens of species, the tall, ethereal Celestians with their feathered wings, the crystalline Terrathals whose bodies chimed with each movement, the multi-armed Croxy with their intricate mechanical enhancements, and of course Altarians in their flowing robes and glowing crowns. The whispers weren't subtle. They weren't meant to be. "Look how primitive he appears. I heard humans still use projectile weapons. Their ships can't even achieve true faster-than-light travel without using those crude jump gates. Zarathal must truly be desperate to accept such a mate." Though his hand unconsciously moved to touch another device concealed beneath his robes. 3 years of studying galactic politics and alien psychology had taught him that perception was everything among the nobility. They saw what they expected to see, a primitive human who had somehow convinced a noble lady to marry him for political convenience. The ceremony began with the traditional Altarian rituals. Priests with elaborately decorated psychic crowns chanted in harmonic frequencies that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Holographic displays showed the genealogies of both houses, with Zara's lineage stretching back thousands of years in an unbroken line of genetic perfection. When they reached Marcus's family tree, the display showed only a few generations of farmers and engineers from Earth's colony worlds. A ripple of amusement passed through the crowd. Lord Commander Thexmore had positioned himself prominently among the attendees, and Marcus could see him speaking quietly to other nobles, likely sharing whatever information his attempted mind-reading had revealed. The Altarian's 4 arms gestured expressively as he spoke, and Marcus noticed that more and more nobles were turning to stare at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disdain. The ceremony continued with the exchange of bonds, where both partners were supposed to demonstrate their worthiness through displays of their species' greatest achievements. Zara moved first, and the hall filled with gasps of appreciation as she demonstrated her psychic abilities. Her mind reached out to every person present, creating a shared emotional experience of joy and love that left many of the attendees with tears in their eyes. Then it was Marcus's turn. The hall fell silent as he stepped forward. According to tradition, he was supposed to demonstrate the greatest achievement of his species. The nobles expected perhaps a crude display of human technology, or maybe some primitive art form. What they didn't expect was for Marcus to reach into his robes and withdraw what appeared to be a simple metallic sphere about the size of a baseball. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustics. "I present to you humanity's greatest achievement, our refusal to accept limitations." He pressed a control on the sphere, and it began to unfold like a complex piece of origami. The metallic surface split and reformed, creating an intricate device that hovered above his palm. Several of the alien nobles leaned forward with interest, recognizing advanced nanotechnology when they saw it. 300 years ago, humanity looked up at the stars and dreamed of traveling between them, Marcus continued. "We were told it was impossible. Our primitive rockets could barely reach our own moon. But we refused to accept that limitation." The device in his hand began to glow, and suddenly the air above the altar filled with a three-dimensional holographic display showing Earth's solar system. But this wasn't just a static image. It was a real-time view from surveillance satellites positioned throughout human space. 100 years ago, we discovered faster-than-light travel, Marcus said as the display zoomed out to show the Jumpgate network that connected human colonies across dozens of star systems. "We were told that our technology was crude compared to the elegance of Altarian quantum tunneling or Celestian phase manipulation. They were right. Our technology was crude, so we made it better." The display shifted to show massive orbital shipyards around Earth and its colonies. Ships that dwarfed anything in the Altarian fleet were under construction, their hulls gleaming with armor that incorporated technology from a dozen different species. A murmur of surprise ran through the crowd. Several military attachés were frantically making notes on their recording devices. 50 years ago, we made first contact with galactic civilization," Marcus continued, and now his voice carried an edge that made several nobles shift uncomfortably. "We were told that humans were a primitive species that would need centuries to catch up to the established powers. We were told that our chaotic genetics made us inferior to the carefully cultivated bloodlines of the noble houses. We were told to know our place." The holographic display shifted again, now showing detailed schematics of human military technology. Weapons that incorporated principles from quantum physics, genetics, and psychic manipulation. Ships that could phase through solid matter or manipulate gravity itself. Lord Commander Thexmore was no longer smiling. "Today," Marcus said, his hand moving to touch the concealed device under his robes, "I want to show you what humans do when we're told to know our place." He pressed a control, and suddenly every electronic device in the hall went dead. The holographic displays flickered and died. The psychic dampening fields that protected the nobles' minds shut down. Even the bioluminescent patterns on the Altarian nobles dimmed as their enhanced genetics were temporarily suppressed. But Marcus's device continued to function perfectly. "You see," Marcus said into the sudden silence, "while your species were perfecting psychic abilities and genetic manipulation, humans were learning to adapt. We studied every species we encountered. We analyzed their technology, their biology, their weaknesses, and we learned." The device in his hand pulsed, and suddenly every person in the hall could feel something pressing against their minds. Not the gentle touch of Altarian telepathy, but something harder, more invasive. Several nobles cried out in alarm. "Don't worry," Marcus said calmly. "I'm not reading your thoughts. I'm simply demonstrating that human technology can now replicate and counter every advantage you think you possess over us." And Marcus noticed that several of the military attachés were reaching for weapons that wouldn't function in the electromagnetic field his device was generating. "For 3 years, I have listened to whispers about how primitive humans are," Marcus continued, his voice growing harder. "I have watched your nobles treat my species as amusing pets who might someday evolve into something worth respecting. I have endured condescending lectures about genetic superiority and advanced technology." The device pulsed again, and suddenly the hall's main display screens flickered back to life, showing a view of space above Vextari Prime. But something was wrong with the image. Where there should have been empty space, massive shapes were becoming visible as cloaking fields disengaged. Human warships, dozens of them, each one easily twice the size of the Altarian vessels that served as the planet's defense fleet. The hall erupted in shocked voices and the sound of nobles frantically trying to contact their security forces on communication devices that remained stubbornly dead. "I want to be very clear," Marcus said, and now his voice carried an authority that made even the most powerful nobles fall silent. "I am not here to threaten anyone. I am here to marry the woman I love. But I am also here to deliver a message from humanity to the Galactic Council." The display showed more ships materializing from cloaking. The human fleet now visible around Vextari Prime was larger than anything the Altarians could muster, and their weapons were already targeted on the planet's defense platforms. "The message is simple," Marcus continued. "Humanity is done being underestimated. We are done being dismissed as primitive. We are done being told to know our place." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We know our place. It's among the stars, as equals, not as subjects." Lord Commander Thexmore finally found his voice. "This is an act of war. You cannot threaten the homeworld of House Vextari and expect—" Actually, interrupted a new voice from the back of the hall. "He can." Every head turned to see Lord Vextari himself, Zara's father, walking down the aisle toward the altar, which the patriarch of one of the galaxy's most powerful houses looked remarkably calm for someone whose homeworld was currently surrounded by a hostile fleet. "Father?" Zara's voice was barely a whisper. Lord Vextari reached the altar and placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "My dear child, did you really think I would allow my daughter to marry into a primitive species without thoroughly investigating their capabilities?" He turned to address the assembled nobles, his voice carrying the authority of centuries of leadership. 3 months ago, I received a very interesting proposal from the human government. They offered to share certain technological advances in exchange for formal recognition as an equal power in this sector of the galaxy. The hall erupted in angry voices, but Lord Vextari raised his hand for silence. "I declined," he continued, and Marcus felt a moment of confusion. Not because the offer wasn't generous, but because I wanted to see if humans were truly ready to claim their place among the galactic powers. This young man has spent 3 years infiltrating our society, learning our weaknesses, studying our technology, mapping our defenses. And in 3 years, not one of our security services detected what he was doing. The implications of this statement sent a chill through the assembled nobles. "The fleet surrounding our world isn't here to threaten us," Lord Vextari continued. "It's here to demonstrate that humanity has already surpassed us in the areas that matter most: adaptability, innovation, and the will to do whatever is necessary to protect their people." He turned to Marcus with what might have been approval in his alien features. "Your little demonstration was impressive, young human, but I suspect you have more to show us." Marcus smiled for the first time since the ceremony began. Actually, Lord Vextari, this was just the opening act. The silence in the Hall of Eternal Bonds stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Marcus could feel the weight of hundreds of alien gazes upon him, their expressions ranging from shock to fear to barely contained rage. The holographic displays still showed the massive human fleet maintaining position around Vextari Prime, a not-so-subtle reminder that the balance of power in this sector had just shifted dramatically. Lord Commander Thexmore broke the silence first, his psychic crown flaring with indignation. "This is unconscionable! Lord Vextari, surely you cannot condone this theatrical display of aggression?" Aggression? Lord Vextari's forearms moved in a pattern that Marcus had learned indicated mild amusement. "Commander, I see no aggression here. I see a young man demonstrating his worthiness to marry my daughter, according to our traditions. The exchange of bonds requires each partner to display their species' greatest achievement. I would say Marcus has done so admirably." Several nobles began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of protest and demand. Through the chaos, Marcus could make out fragments of conversation. Immediate recall of all military assets, Violation of the Galactic Non-Aggression Treaty, primitive species overstepping their bounds. Marcus raised his hand, and the device floating above his palm pulsed once. Instantly, every voice in the hall was cut off as a localized sound-dampening field activated. The nobles found themselves able to hear perfectly, but unable to speak above a whisper. "If I may," Marcus said conversationally, his voice carrying clearly through the selective acoustic field, "I think there are some misconceptions that need to be addressed." He gestured toward the holographic displays which shifted to show detailed technical specifications of the human vessels. "First, let's talk about what you're seeing. These aren't invasion craft. They're diplomatic escorts. Every ship out there is broadcasting full technical specifications and defensive postures. Their weapons are powered but not targeted. According to galactic law, this constitutes a formal state visit, not an act of aggression." Admiral Krethos of the Celestian Navy managed to make himself heard through the dampening field. "Those vessels, the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." "What propulsion system are you using?" Marcus smiled. "I'm glad you asked. You see, that's part of humanity's greatest achievement that I mentioned. We don't just innovate, we integrate. Every species we've encountered has taught us something new." The display zoomed in on one of the human vessels, revealing its complex hull configuration. The armor plating uses principles learned from Terrathol crystal growth techniques, but applied to metallic substrates. The energy shields incorporate Celestian phase manipulation technology, but we found ways to make them require significantly less power. Several military attachés were frantically trying to record this information, but their devices remained stubbornly offline. "The propulsion system," Marcus continued, "combines Altarian quantum tunneling with our own discovery of what we call diamond domo folding. Instead of moving through space, we convince space to move around us. It's approximately 3 times faster than traditional FTL drives, and uses a fraction of the energy." Lord Vextari studied the display with interest. "Fascinating. And how long did it take your species to develop these innovations?" "About 15 years from first contact to full implementation," Marcus replied. "We had some advantages, of course. Being underestimated meant that other species were quite willing to share their technology, assuming we'd never be able to understand or improve upon it." The implications of this statement sent a ripple of unease through the assembled nobles. Marcus could see the realization dawning on their faces. Humanity had been systematically gathering intelligence and technology while presenting themselves as harmless primitives. But the real achievement, Marcus continued, his tone growing more serious, isn't the technology itself. It's what the technology represents. You see, every species in this galaxy has spent millennia perfecting themselves. Genetic optimization, psychic enhancement, technological specialization. You've all become very good at being exactly what you are. He paused, letting his words sink in. Humans became very good at becoming whatever we needed to be. The display shifted again, now showing a time-lapse of human expansion across the galaxy. The progression was startling in its speed. Within 300 years, humanity had gone from a single-world species to maintaining colonies and research stations in dozens of star systems. We learned Altarian psychic techniques and developed technological ways to replicate them. We studied Celestian phase manipulation and found ways to improve its efficiency. We analyzed Croxy cybernetic integration and created better interfaces between biology and machinery. We observed Terrathol crystal growth and revolutionized our material science. Marcus gestured toward the assembled nobles. Each of your species represents the pinnacle of evolution in specific areas, but evolution requires environmental pressure. For most of you, that pressure ended thousands of years ago when you achieved dominance in your ecological niches. His expression grew harder. Humans never stopped facing pressure. We've had to adapt to survive since we first left our homeworld. Every challenge made us stronger. Every obstacle forced us to innovate. Every dismissal from the established powers motivated us to prove ourselves. Lord Commander Thexmore finally managed to overcome the acoustic dampening enough to speak clearly. Even if everything you say is true, you are still vastly outnumbered. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council could overwhelm your forces. Could they? Marcus asked mildly. He pressed another control on his device, and the holographic display expanded to show the entire star system. Admiral Krethos, how many human vessels can you detect in this system? Approximately 47 ships in stable orbit around Vextory Prime, with another dozen patrol craft moving in standard perimeter patterns. And how many can you detect now? Marcus asked, pressing another control. The display suddenly filled with new contacts as hundreds of additional ships materialized from stealth fields throughout the system. They had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind moons, even in the upper atmosphere of gas giants. The human presence in the Vextari system wasn't a diplomatic escort. It was a full invasion fleet. The hall erupted in chaos as the acoustic dampening finally failed under the strain of hundreds of beings trying to shout at once. Marcus could hear fragments of angry demands and panicked communications attempts, but one voice cut through the noise with psychic authority. Silence! Lady Zarthel stepped forward, her bioluminescent patterns blazing with power that made several nobles step back involuntarily. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonic undertones that commanded attention from every being present. You dare to come to my wedding and turn it into a political demonstration? Her anger was magnificent, causing the ceremonial crystals throughout the hall to resonate with sympathetic vibrations. You use my father's house as a stage for your power games and threats? For a moment, Marcus thought her fury was directed at him. Then she turned toward the assembled nobles, her violet eyes blazing with indignation. For months, I have listened to whispers and sneers about my choice of mate. I have endured lectures about genetic purity and species compatibility. I have watched representatives of the superior races treat the man I love as if he were some amusing pet I had decided to keep. Her psychic presence expanded, and Marcus could feel the raw power radiating from her. Around the hall, other Altarians began to glow in sympathetic response to their lady's emotions. You want to see primitive? Zara continued, her voice growing louder. Primitive is judging worth by bloodline instead of character. Primitive is refusing to acknowledge capability because it comes from an unexpected source. Primitive is maintaining your sense of superiority by dismissing anyone who might challenge it. She moved to stand beside Marcus, taking his hand in hers. This man has spent 3 years proving himself worthy not just of me, but of respect from this council. He has shown patience with your condescension, grace under your mockery, and wisdom in the face of your prejudice. And now he has demonstrated that his species possesses both the capability and the will to claim their rightful place among the stars. Lord Commander Thexmore's psychic crown pulsed with frustrated energy. Lady Zarathul, surely you cannot support this deception. This human has been conducting espionage operations against the Galactic Council. Have I? Marcus asked quietly. Admiral Kretos, is it illegal for a species to study publicly available information about galactic technology and politics? The Celestian Admiral consulted a datapad that had finally come back online. No, such research falls under the educational exchange provisions of the Galactic Treaty. Is it illegal for a species to develop new technologies based on scientific principles observed in other cultures? No, technological development is considered a sovereign right. Is it illegal for a species to maintain defensive forces capable of protecting their territory and interests? No. Self-defense is explicitly guaranteed under galactic law. Then what law have I broken? What crime has humanity committed? We studied your technology and improved upon it. We observed your military capabilities and surpassed them. We listened to your assessments of our primitive nature and decided to prove you wrong. He gestured toward the holographic display, which now showed detailed maps of human space. Every system under human control was either uninhabited when we arrived or was ceded to us through legitimate treaty negotiations. Every technological advance we've made has been shared with our allies. Every military action we've taken has been in defense of our own territory or in support of lawful galactic peacekeeping operations. The display shifted to show communication logs between human space and various galactic governments. We have followed every law, honored every treaty, and respected every boundary established by the Galactic Council. The only thing we have refused to do is accept your assessment that we are inherently inferior. Lord Vextari stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. Young Marcus raises an interesting point. If humanity has developed these capabilities while operating within the bounds of galactic law, then the question becomes not whether they have the right to possess such power, but whether the Galactic Council has the wisdom to acknowledge it. "You cannot be serious," protested Senator Cheesnell of the Croxy Assembly. "These humans have clearly been planning some form of aggressive expansion. No species develops this level of military capability without hostile intentions." "Really?" Marcus asked. "Because from our perspective, we've been developing defensive capabilities in response to a galaxy that has made it quite clear that we are not welcome as equals." The holographic display shifted to show recorded communications between various galactic powers discussing the human problem. Marcus had obviously been monitoring their supposedly secure diplomatic channels for some time. 3 months ago, the Celestian Navy conducted war games that specifically modeled the subjugation of human space. 2 months ago, the Croxy Assembly passed a resolution declaring that human expansion should be contained for the greater good of galactic stability. 1 month ago, the Altarian High Command issued strategic assessments suggesting that human territory would be better managed under enlightened supervision. Each revelation hit the assembled nobles like a physical blow. These were classified military documents that should have been impossible for humans to access. "So tell me," Marcus continued, his voice growing harder, "which species in this system is demonstrating aggressive intent? The humans who came here openly for a wedding ceremony, or the galactic powers who have been planning our conquest while smiling at our diplomatic overtures?" The silence that followed was different from the shocked quiet of earlier. This was the silence of beings who had been caught in their own hypocrisy and were struggling to find a response. Admiral Krethos was the first to speak. "How did you obtain those classified documents?" Marcus smiled grimly. "The same way we obtained everything else, by being underestimated. For 3 years, every major power in this galaxy has welcomed human researchers and cultural attachés into their most sensitive facilities. You showed us your technology because you assumed we couldn't understand it. You discussed your plans in front of us because you assumed we weren't sophisticated enough to be a threat. Every human in galactic space has been gathering intelligence?" Lord Vextari asked. "Every human in galactic space has been learning," Marcus corrected. "The intelligence gathering was just a side effect. We came to study your cultures and technologies because we genuinely wanted to understand our place in galactic civilization. What we learned was that you had no intention of giving us a place at all." The holographic display shifted one final time, showing a new image that made several nobles gasp with recognition. It was Earth, but not as they remembered it. The planet that had been dismissed as a primitive backwater was now surrounded by massive orbital installations, shipyards, and defense platforms that dwarfed anything in the galaxy. "This is what humanity has built while you were debating whether we deserve to exist as an independent species," Marcus said. "This is what we accomplished while you were planning to contain us for the good of galactic stability. We didn't come here to threaten you. We came here to announce that the age of humanity being dismissed and underestimated is over. From this point forward, humanity will be treated as an equal partner in galactic affairs. Or we will make our own arrangements." "What kind of arrangements?" Senator Cheesnall demanded. Marcus's smile was not entirely pleasant. "The kind that don't require your approval or cooperation." The tension in the Hall of Eternal Bonds had reached a breaking point. What began as a wedding ceremony had transformed into the most significant diplomatic crisis in galactic history. Marcus could see the conflict playing out on the faces of the assembled nobles: shock, fear, anger, and in some cases, grudging respect. Senator Chicksnell's cybernetic implants whirred as he processed the implications of Marcus's statement. "Are you threatening to withdraw from galactic society entirely?" "Not threatening," Marcus replied calmly. "Simply stating a fact. Humanity has spent 3 years trying to earn respect through cooperation and contribution. We've shared our innovations, participated in joint research projects, and contributed to peacekeeping efforts. In return, we've been treated as junior partners at best, potential threats at worst." The holographic display shifted to show a star map of the local galactic arm. Human territory, highlighted in blue, formed a complex web of systems connected by trade routes and communication networks. What surprised many of the nobles was how extensive that network had become. "We control 17% of the strategic resources in this sector," Marcus continued, highlighting mineral-rich systems that bore human colonies. "We provide 32% of the rare earth elements essential for advanced technology. Our shipyards produce 48% of the civilian vessels used for inter-system commerce." Admiral Krethos studied the display with growing alarm. "Those percentages, if humanity withdrew from the galactic economy, the current balance of power would collapse within 6 months," Marcus finished, "not because we're irreplaceable, but because the removal of that much economic activity would force every major power to reorganize their supply chains, trade agreements, and resource allocation strategies." "You would hold the galaxy hostage for your political demands?" "We would exercise our sovereign right to choose our own allies and trading partners," Zara interjected, her bioluminescent pattern still blazing with authority. "Something that every species represented here has always taken for granted." She stepped forward, and Marcus noticed that other Altarians in the hall were beginning to move closer to their position. HFY Stories' influence extended far beyond the immediate family, and it appeared that Zara's passionate defense of her chosen mate was resonating with her people. "For 3 years I have watched Marcus navigate our political landscape with more skill and grace than most beings born to it," Zara continued. "He has learned our languages, studied our histories, and contributed to our scientific advancement. He has earned the respect of every researcher who has worked with him and the friendship of everyone who has taken the time to know him as an individual rather than as a representative of his species." Her violet eyes blazed as she turned to face the assembled nobles. "Yet many of you still refuse to see past your prejudices. You dismiss his achievements because they come from a human mind. You question his motives because they challenge your assumptions about primitive species. You fear his capabilities because they threaten your sense of inherent superiority." Marcus felt a surge of gratitude toward the woman he loved. Zara was risking her own standing in galactic society by defending humanity so forcefully, and he knew that her support would carry weight with many of the undecided nobles. "Lady Zarathul speaks with wisdom," said a new voice from the crowd. Ambassador Telenor of the Terathal Collective stepped forward, her crystalline body chiming softly with each movement. "The collective has worked closely with human researchers on several projects. Their innovations in crystal matrix technology have advanced our own capabilities significantly." She gestured toward the holographic display. "If the data being presented is accurate, humanity has surpassed us in several key areas of technological development. This is not a threat, it is an opportunity. The Terathal Collective would welcome formal recognition of humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs." Senator Chicksnell's cybernetic eye clicked as it refocused. "Ambassador Telenor, surely you cannot be serious. These humans have demonstrated clear deceptive capabilities. How can we trust a species that has been conducting covert intelligence operations for 3 years? How could we trust species that have been planning our subjugation while hosting our diplomats?" Marcus countered. "Admiral Krethos, when was the last time the Celestian Navy informed human authorities about military exercises targeted against our territory?" The Admiral's feathers ruffled with discomfort. Such exercises are routine strategic planning. They do not necessarily indicate hostile intent, Oddnote said. And human intelligence gathering is routine security preparation, Marcus replied. It doesn't necessarily indicate aggressive intent either. The difference is that we came here today to be honest about our capabilities while you've been hiding your intentions behind diplomatic pleasantries. Lord Vextari raised his hand for attention. Perhaps this is an appropriate time to address the central question directly. Humanity seeks recognition as an equal power in galactic affairs. What specific changes are you proposing? Marcus nodded appreciatively. Despite his initial reservations about his daughter's choice of mate, Lord Vextari was proving to be a pragmatic leader who understood the value of cutting through diplomatic rhetoric to address core issues. 3 fundamental changes, Marcus replied. First, formal recognition of human sovereignty over our existing territory and our right to expand into unclaimed systems according to the same protocols that apply to all galactic powers. He paused as several nobles began to object, then continued. Second, representation on the Galactic Council proportional to our economic and military contributions to galactic stability. We're not asking for special treatment, just the same rights and responsibilities that you extend to each other. And third, Lord Vextari prompted, an end to the casual dismissal of human capabilities and contributions, Marcus said, his voice growing harder. We're tired of being treated as amusing primitives who might someday evolve into something worth respecting. We want our research taken seriously, our proposals given fair consideration, and our perspectives valued in galactic decision-making. Senator Chixnell's mechanical appendages clicked in agitation. These demands would fundamentally alter the balance of power that has maintained galactic stability for millennia. Because that balance was based on the assumption that certain species were inherently superior to others, it was designed to maintain the dominance of established powers while preventing newer species from challenging the status quo. It was, to use a human term, rigged from the beginning. The holographic display shifted to show historical data about galactic civilization. Every major decision in the Galactic Council for the past 500 years has been made by the same 5 species. Every trade agreement, every territorial dispute, every technological sharing arrangement has been structured to benefit those established powers. How many species in this hall have been denied full council representation because they lack the necessary sophistication for such responsibility? How many have seen their territorial expansion limited because their neighbors had prior historical claims? How many have been forced to accept junior partnership status because they didn't possess the genetic optimization or psychic development deemed necessary for equal treatment? The uncomfortable shifting among many of the lesser-ranked species told Marcus that his words were hitting their mark. The Galactic Council's power structure had indeed been designed to maintain the dominance of its founding members. What you're proposing is revolution, Admiral Kretos said quietly. What we're proposing is evolution, Zara corrected. The same evolutionary pressure that has driven every species to grow beyond their original limitations. Galactic civilization has become stagnant because the dominant powers have no incentive to change a system that benefits them. She moved to stand beside the holographic display, her natural grace making her appear to dance among the projected stars. Humanity represents something that this galaxy hasn't seen in centuries, a species that achieved power through adaptation rather than inheritance. They earned their place through innovation rather than bloodline. They succeeded by embracing change rather than resisting it. Lord Commander Thexmore's forearms moved in a gesture of dismissal. Pretty words, Lady Zarathul, but the reality remains that these humans have demonstrated clear hostile capabilities. Their fleet surrounding this world speaks louder than any diplomatic rhetoric. Does it? Marcus asked. He pressed a control on his device, and the holographic display zoomed in on one of the human vessels in orbit. The ship's hull began to reconfigure itself, armor plates sliding away to reveal what was clearly a medical bay. Fleet Admiral Richardson, please report your mission status. A new voice filled the hall, speaking through the ship's communication system. Mission status is humanitarian support as requested by Lord Vextari. We're currently providing disaster relief to the southern continent following the seismic activity that damaged several population centers. The display shifted to show human medical teams working alongside Altarian emergency responders. Massive human transport ships were delivering supplies and temporary housing to refugee camps, while human engineers worked to restore power and communication networks. "This is what a human invasion fleet actually looks like," Marcus said quietly. "We came here in force not to threaten Vextari Prime, but to help rebuild it. The weapons you detected are real, but so are the medical facilities, engineering workshops, and emergency supplies." The revelation sent another shockwave through the assembled nobles. Several military attachés were frantically reviewing their tactical assessments, realizing that they had completely misread the situation. "You used our expectations against us," Admiral Krethos said with something that might have been admiration. "You knew we would assume hostile intent and react accordingly. We knew that your assumptions about human capabilities would color your interpretation of everything we did," Marcus agreed. "What you saw as an invasion force, we intended as a demonstration of how human military and humanitarian capabilities are fundamentally integrated. Every human vessel carries both defensive systems and disaster relief equipment. Every crew member is trained in both combat operations and emergency response. Every deployment is planned to maximize both security and humanitarian impact. This is the difference between human military doctrine and traditional galactic approaches," he continued. "You build fleets designed to project power and intimidate enemies. We build fleets designed to protect people and solve problems. The fact that they're also more militarily capable than anything you can field is almost incidental." Ambassador Telenor's crystalline form chimed with curiosity. "Almost incidental?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Well, not entirely incidental. Humans have a saying, peace through superior firepower. We believe in being prepared to defend what we've built while hoping we never have to do so." "A rather paradoxical philosophy," Lord Vextari observed. "Not paradoxical," Sara said. "Practical. Humans understand that strength without compassion becomes tyranny, while compassion without strength becomes victimization. They've found a balance that allows them to help when help is needed and fight when fighting is necessary." The hall had grown quiet again, but this time the silence was contemplative rather than shocked. Marcus could see that some of the assembled nobles were genuinely reconsidering their assumptions about humanity and its place in galactic civilization. Senator Kichisnell broke the silence. "Even if we accept your arguments about human capabilities and intentions, the fact remains that the current system has maintained galactic stability for centuries. Change of the magnitude you're proposing would be disruptive." "Change is always disruptive," Marcus agreed. "But stagnation is ultimately more destructive than disruption. Your stable system is starting to calcify. Innovation has slowed because the dominant powers have no incentive to compete with each other. Exploration has nearly stopped because there's no pressure to expand. Scientific advancement has plateaued because breakthrough discoveries might upset the established order." The holographic display shifted to show comparative data about galactic development over the past several centuries. The trends were unmistakable. Technological progress, territorial expansion, and economic growth had all been declining steadily. "Humanity's rapid advancement isn't just about our species' particular talents," Marcus continued. "It's about what happens when you introduce real competitive pressure into a stagnant system. We've forced everyone to reconsider their assumptions and up their game." He looked directly at the assembled nobles. "Some of you have responded by viewing us as a threat to be contained or eliminated. Others have begun to see us as a catalyst for positive change. The choice you make today will determine which path galactic civilization follows for the next 1,000 years. The weight of Marcus's final statement settled over the Hall of Eternal Bonds like a physical presence. Every being present understood that they were witnessing a pivotal moment in galactic history. The decision made here would echo through the centuries, determining whether the galaxy embraced change or retreated into defensive isolation. Lord Vextari was the first to break the contemplative silence. "Young Marcus, your presentation has been illuminating. However, I believe there are practical concerns that must be addressed before any formal recognition can be considered." "Please, Lord Vextari, I welcome your questions." "Security," the Altarian Patriarch said bluntly. "Your species has demonstrated remarkable capabilities in intelligence gathering and technological development. How can the existing galactic powers be assured that humanity won't use these advantages aggressively once you achieve equal status?" It was a fair question, and Marcus had been expecting it. The same way humanity can be assured that the existing galactic powers won't use their established advantages against us, through mutual deterrence, shared interests, and the recognition that cooperation benefits everyone more than conflict. He gestured toward the holographic display, which shifted to show detailed economic projections. "Lord Vextari, your house controls approximately 12% of the quantum processing capacity in this sector. The Celestian Confederation manages 18% of the transportation networks. The Croxy Assembly maintains 20% of the cybernetic manufacturing base." The display highlighted the interconnected nature of these resources. No single species, including humanity, has sufficient resources to dominate the others. But every species has something essential to contribute to the whole. This interdependence is our best guarantee of peaceful cooperation. Chixisnell's cybernetic implants clicked as he processed the data. These projections assume that current trade relationships will continue unchanged. What if humanity decides to leverage its position to renegotiate those relationships? What if the Croxy Assembly decides to do the same? Marcus countered. Or the Celestians? Or any other major power? The ability to renegotiate agreements is a fundamental right of sovereign entities. The fact that humanity now has enough leverage to ensure fair treatment doesn't make us any more dangerous than you've always been. Admiral Kretos ruffled his feathers thoughtfully. "There is wisdom in that perspective. Perhaps the real question is not whether humanity can be trusted with power, but whether any of us can be trusted with the level of dominance we've enjoyed." His observations sent a ripple of uncomfortable recognition through the assembled nobles. The existing power structure had indeed given certain species disproportionate influence over galactic affairs, and that influence hadn't always been exercised wisely. "Admiral Krethos raises an important point," Zara interjected, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to display diplomatic respect. "For too long, galactic civilization has operated on the assumption that some species are inherently more qualified to make decisions for others. This assumption has led to resentment, stagnation, and the kind of planning that sees conquest as a solution to political disagreement." She moved gracefully through the assembled nobles, her words carrying the harmonic authority that made her one of the most effective diplomats in Altarian society. Marcus has shown us what happens when that assumption is challenged by a species that refuses to accept limitations. The question we must answer is whether we will adapt to this new reality or attempt to suppress it. Lord Commander Thexmore's psychic crown pulsed with frustrated energy. "Lady Zarathul, you speak as if adapting to human demands is our only option. But humanity represents a single species against the combined might of galactic civilization. They may have advanced rapidly, but they are still vastly outnumbered." "Are they?" Marcus asked quietly. He pressed another control on his device, and the holographic display expanded to show communication logs from across the galaxy. "In the 3 hours since this ceremony began, we've received formal statements of support from 47 minor species and 12 major powers." The display showed messages flooding in from across galactic space. Species that had been marginalized by the current power structure were rallying behind humanity's call for equal representation. Even some established powers were acknowledging that the time for change had come. The Andromedan Trade Consortium has offered to mediate negotiations for a new galactic charter, Marcus continued, highlighting one particularly significant message. The Spiral Arm Development Council has proposed establishing a new framework for territorial expansion that would apply equally to all species. The Independent Systems Alliance has suggested restructuring the Galactic Council to provide proportional representation based on economic contribution rather than historical precedents. Senator Cheesnell's mechanical appendages clicked rapidly as he processed the implications. This is orchestrated rebellion. Humanity has been coordinating with disaffected species to undermine the established order. Humanity has been building relationships with species who share our desire for fair representation, Marcus corrected. The fact that so many civilizations were already dissatisfied with the current system suggests that the problem isn't human agitation. It's systemic inequality that has been building for centuries. Ambassador Telenor chimed softly as she stepped forward. The senator raises a valid concern about coordination, but perhaps from the wrong perspective. The Terrathal Collective has been in communication with several other species about reforming galactic governance. These discussions began before humanity achieved its current capabilities. Her crystalline form reflected the holographic displays, creating a dazzling array of light patterns. What humanity has provided is not the spark of rebellion, but the catalyst for changes that were already necessary. Their rapid advancement has simply made it clear that the old assumptions about species hierarchy are no longer tenable. Lord Vextari studied the communication logs with keen interest. Marcus, I'm curious about the timing of these messages. They arrived very quickly for supposedly spontaneous responses to today's events. Marcus smiled. You're right to be suspicious, Lord Vextari. These responses weren't spontaneous. For the past 6 months, human diplomats have been quietly discussing the possibility of galactic reform with our trading partners and allies. Today's demonstration was as much about showing them that change was possible as it was about informing the established powers that change was inevitable. So this entire ceremony was a performance, Lord Commander Thexmore said accusingly, a carefully orchestrated display designed to manipulate our responses. This ceremony is my wedding, Zara said firmly, her violet eyes blazing with renewed anger. It is the celebration of my union with the man I love. The fact that it also serves as a forum for addressing galactic political issues doesn't diminish its personal significance. She turned to face Marcus, and her expression softened despite the political tension surrounding them. Marcus, I need to ask you something important. When you proposed to me 3 years ago, was it because you loved me or because marrying into House Vextari would advance humanity's political objectives? Every being in the hall understood that Marcus's answer would determine not only the future of his marriage, but the credibility of everything he had said about humanity's intentions. Marcus set his device aside and took Zara's hands in his, looking directly into her eyes. When I first met you at that engineering symposium on Kepler Station, I was there to study Altarian quantum manipulation techniques. I was definitely conducting research that would benefit humanity. But when you started discussing your theories about dimensional folding, I forgot all about my mission objectives. His voice grew softer, more personal. I spent the next 6 hours listening to you explain concepts that revolutionized my understanding of physics. But what really captured my attention wasn't your brilliant mind, though that was certainly impressive. It was the way you lit up when you talked about discovery, the way you genuinely cared about sharing knowledge rather than hoarding it, the way you treated me as an equal colleague rather than a primitive researcher who needed to be humored. Zara's bioluminescent patterns began to shift toward the warm golden hues that indicated deep affection among her people. I fell in love with you before I even knew who your father was, Marcus continued. When I learned you were part of House Vextari, my first thought wasn't about political advantages. It was terror that someone from such a prestigious family would never seriously consider a relationship with a human. He paused, his voice becoming even more intimate despite the hundreds of listeners. The fact that our relationship has political implications is real, and I won't pretend otherwise. But those implications exist because we fell in love. not the other way around. If you had been a research assistant with no family connections, I would have proposed anyway." Zara's patterns exploded into brilliant gold and silver spirals that drew gasps of appreciation from the Altarians present. It was the most intense display of joy and love many of them had ever witnessed. "I believe you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And I want everyone in this hall to understand something. I didn't fall in love with Marcus because he was human or despite the fact that he was human. I fell in love with him because he is brilliant, kind, innovative, and completely dedicated to making the galaxy a better place for everyone in it." She turned back to the assembled nobles, her expression becoming more formal but no less passionate. "The political situation we're discussing today grew out of our personal relationship, but it exists independently of it. Whether or not Marcus and I marry, humanity has already achieved the capabilities he's demonstrated. Whether or not the galactic powers accept these capabilities, they represent a new reality that must be addressed." Lord Vextari stepped forward, and Marcus noticed that the Altarian Patriarch's expression had grown considerably warmer. "Young Marcus, you have answered my daughter's question with honesty and grace. You have also demonstrated that humanity possesses both the strength to demand respect and the wisdom to use that strength responsibly." He turned to address the assembled nobles. "House Vextari formally recognizes humanity as an equal partner in galactic civilization. We call upon the Galactic Council to establish negotiations for restructuring our mutual relationships according to the principles of fair representation and mutual benefit." The declaration sent a shockwave through the hall. House Vextari's support carried enormous weight in galactic politics, and their endorsement would influence many undecided powers. Admiral Krethos was the next to speak. "The Celestian Confederation seconds House Vextari's position. We have worked closely with human researchers and traders for several years, and we have found them to be both capable and trustworthy partners." Ambassador Telenor's crystalline form chimed with harmony. "The Terrafell Collective agrees. We propose establishing a special commission to draft new frameworks for galactic governance that reflect current realities rather than historical precedents." But Senator Chixnall's cybernetic implants flared with agitation. "This is madness. You're allowing yourselves to be manipulated by an elaborate display of technological theater. Even if humanity has achieved some advances, they remain a single species with limited resources and no established infrastructure for galactic leadership." His expression growing serious. "There's something else I should show you." He activated his device one final time, and the holographic display expanded to show a real-time view of space beyond the Vextari system. What they saw there would change everything once again. The holographic display expanded beyond anything the assembled nobles had seen before, revealing a real-time view that stretched across multiple star systems. What they witnessed left them speechless. Massive structures were materializing throughout local space, not ships, but installations the size of small moons. These weren't the human vessels they had been observing around Vextari Prime. These were something entirely different, something that redefined their understanding of human capabilities. "Construction platforms," Marcus explained quietly, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. "We call them Genesis stations. Each one is capable of building a complete industrial infrastructure in any star system within 18 months. The display zoomed in on the nearest station, revealing its impossibly complex structure. Vast manufacturing bays were already producing smaller vessels and equipment. Massive resource collection arrays were deploying toward asteroid belts and gas giants. Most incredibly, entire sections of the station appeared to be growing rather than being assembled, suggesting biological or hybrid technologies beyond anything in the galactic database. "How many?" Admiral Krethos asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 47 stations are currently deploying throughout this sector, Marcus replied. Each one represents approximately 10 times the industrial capacity of a major planetary manufacturing center. They're completely self-sufficient and can operate independently for decades without external support. Senator Cheesnell's cybernetic implants were clicking frantically as he tried to process the implications. This is impossible. The resource requirements alone, no single species could build something like this. You're right, Marcus agreed. No single species could build this. But humanity didn't build this alone. The display shifted to show the internal structure of one of the Genesis stations. To the shock of everyone present, the crews working within were not exclusively human. Terathal crystal shapers were growing structural components. Celestian phase engineers were creating transportation networks. Croxy cybernetic specialists were integrating control systems. Altarian quantum manipulators were calibrating the station's power cores. For the past 2 years, humanity has been working secretly with 38 different species to develop this technology, Marcus explained. Not as clients or contractors, but as equal partners in the largest collaborative engineering project in galactic history. Lord Commander Thexmore's psychic crown flared with disbelief. 38 species, that's nearly 2/3 of the known galactic civilizations. It's 2/3 of the species that were willing to work with us, Marcus corrected. The other third were either too suspicious of human intentions, too committed to the existing power structure, or too convinced of their own superiority to consider collaboration. Ambassador Telenor's crystalline form was resonating with harmonics that indicated profound excitement. The crystalline matrices in those stations, they're using our most advanced growth techniques, but applied on a scale we never imagined possible. How did you convince our scientists to share such sensitive technology? We didn't have to convince them, Marcus replied. We offered them something they wanted more than technological secrecy. The chance to see their innovations applied on the largest possible scale, with full credit and ongoing collaboration. Every species that contributed to the Genesis project retains full rights to their technological contributions and continues to benefit from improvements developed through collaborative research. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just been developing their own capabilities. They had been orchestrating the largest technological collaboration in galactic history, creating a coalition of species that were now committed to mutual advancement rather than competitive hoarding of knowledge. This changes everything, Lord Vextari said quietly. Marcus, you're not just asking for recognition of human capabilities. You're demonstrating that humanity has become the catalyst for a complete transformation of how galactic civilization operates. That was always the goal, Marcus admitted. Humanity learned early in our galactic interactions that the existing system was designed to maintain static hierarchies. Species hoarded their advantages to preserve their positions. Innovation was discouraged because breakthrough discoveries might upset established power balances. Cooperation was limited because sharing knowledge meant sharing power. He gestured toward the massive station still deploying across local space. We realized that the only way to change this system was to demonstrate a better alternative. The Genesis Project represents what galactic civilization could accomplish if species worked together instead of against each other. Senator Kishnal was frantically consulting his data systems, trying to understand how such a massive project could have been kept secret. Our intelligence services detected nothing. How did you coordinate with 38 species without any of our monitoring systems identifying the communication traffic? Senator, your intelligence services were monitoring traditional communication channels and known diplomatic contacts. The Genesis Project was coordinated through cultural exchange programs, scientific conferences, and trade negotiations. Every species involved contributed to the project through activities that appeared completely routine to outside observers. The display shifted to show a timeline of the project's development. Research breakthroughs that had seemed like independent discoveries by various species were revealed to be coordinated advances. Trade agreements that had appeared to be simple resource exchanges were shown to include sophisticated technology transfers. Cultural exchange programs had been used to move key personnel between species without triggering security concerns. For 2 years, the galaxy's most brilliant minds have been working together on humanity's vision of collaborative advancement, Marcus continued. The Genesis stations are just the beginning. We've also developed new approaches to terraforming, resource extraction, transportation, communication, and even psychic development. Psychic development? Lord Commander Thexmore's crown flared with sharp interest. Humans have no natural psychic abilities. We don't have natural psychic abilities, Marcus agreed. But we've learned to replicate and enhance them through technology. More importantly, we've discovered ways to help other species develop abilities they never knew they possessed. The display showed data that made several nobles gasp with recognition. Human researchers had not only learned to duplicate the psychic techniques of various species, but they had found ways to combine those techniques in unprecedented ways. Altarian telepathy, enhanced by Celestian phase manipulation, Terathal harmonic resonance, amplified by Croxy cybernetic interfaces. We've created hybrid techniques that are more powerful than anything any single species has achieved, Marcus explained. And we've shared those techniques with every species that contributed to their development. If humanity could enhance the natural abilities of other species while developing technological substitutes for abilities they lacked naturally, the traditional basis for species hierarchy would become meaningless. You're not just challenging the existing power structure, Admiral Krathos realized. You're making it irrelevant. That's exactly what we're doing, Zara said, stepping forward to stand beside Marcus again. The Genesis Project represents the evolution of galactic civilization, from a collection of competing species to a truly collaborative community. She activated her own holographic display, showing the detailed scientific data that had convinced her of humanity's vision. Every species that has participated in this project has seen their capabilities enhanced beyond what they could achieve alone. The Terathals have grown crystal structures 10 times larger than their previous records. The Celestians have achieved phase manipulations that seemed theoretically impossible. The Croxy have developed cybernetic interfaces that approach true consciousness. And the Altarians? Lord Vextari asked. The Altarians have learned to extend their psychic abilities across interstellar distances, Zara replied, her patterns glowing with pride. Human quantum field manipulation techniques have allowed us to establish instantaneous telepathic networks spanning dozens of star systems. The assembled nobles were beginning to understand that they weren't just witnessing humanity's rise to power, they were seeing the emergence of a completely new form of galactic civilization. So what happens now? Senator Kitchisnell asked, his hostility finally giving way to resigned acceptance. What do you want from the species that haven't joined your coalition? Marcus exchanged a look with Zara, and she nodded encouragingly. We want you to join us, he said simply. Every species that has participated in the Genesis Project has benefited enormously. We believe that galactic civilization is strongest when it includes everyone, not just those who were willing to trust us from the beginning. He gestured toward the Genesis stations. Those installations aren't weapons or tools of domination. They're platforms for collaborative development. Any species that wants to participate in the project will have access to technologies and capabilities that they could never develop alone. And if we refuse, Lord Commander Thexmore asked, then you continue operating under the old system while the rest of the galaxy moves forward under the new one, Marcus replied. We're not going to force participation or punish non-cooperation, but we're also not going to artificially limit our own development to make you more comfortable with the status quo. It was a diplomatic masterpiece. Humanity was offering genuine partnership while making it clear that isolating themselves would mean being left behind by galactic development. Lord Vextari was the first to respond. House Vextari formally requests membership in the Genesis Project. We believe that our quantum manipulation expertise could contribute significantly to your collaborative research. The Celestian Confederation seconds that request, Admiral Krathos added. Our phase manipulation techniques appear to complement human quantum field theories in fascinating ways. Ambassador Telenor chimed with harmony. the Terrathal Collective has already been participating informally. We would welcome the opportunity to formalize our collaboration. One by one, the assembled nobles began to request information about joining the project. Even Senator Chisna, despite his cybernetic nature making it difficult for him to express emotion clearly, was obviously reconsidering his opposition. "Senator," Marcus said quietly, "the Croxy Assembly's cybernetic expertise has been essential to the Genesis Project's success. The invitation to formal participation has always been open." The senator's mechanical appendages clicked, and what Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. "The Assembly will need to review the full technical specifications before making any commitments." "Of course," Marcus replied. Transparency is one of the fundamental principles of collaborative development. As the political discussions continued, Zara moved closer to Marcus, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to private communication frequencies. "So," she said in the harmonic equivalent of a whisper, "are you ready to finish getting married? Or do you want to negotiate a few more galactic treaties first?" Marcus laughed, the sound carrying genuine joy despite the political complexity surrounding them. "I think we've accomplished enough galactic transformation for one wedding day. Shall we proceed with the ceremony?" Lord Vextari called for attention. "If the political discussions can be temporarily suspended, I believe we have a wedding to complete. The exchange of bonds has been successfully accomplished by both partners." Marcus has demonstrated humanity's greatest achievement, and Zara has shown the depth of Altarian psychic capability. It is time for the joining of lives. The assembled nobles gradually quieted as the ceremony resumed its traditional course. But the atmosphere in the hall had changed completely. What had begun as a gathering of skeptical observers had transformed into a celebration of new possibilities. As Marcus and Zara exchanged their final vows, promising to support each other through whatever challenges the future might bring, the holographic displays around them showed the Genesis stations continuing their deployment across the galaxy. Humanity had not just earned a place at the table of galactic civilization. They had built a new table entirely, one large enough for everyone who was willing to sit as equals. The ceremony concluded with the traditional Altarian blessing, spoken in harmonic tones that resonated through the crystalline hall. "May your union bring forth new wonders, as the joining of different elements creates compounds stronger than either could achieve alone." As the last notes faded, Marcus looked out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization and realized that the blessing applied to far more than just his marriage. The galaxy itself was about to discover what could be accomplished when different species truly worked together as equals. The age of humanity being underestimated was indeed over. The age of galactic collaboration had begun. The alien nobles ridiculed the human Groom until he showed them his firepower. HFY Stories. Best HFY.